I still remember the way the sunlight hit her face that afternoon. We were sitting in my kitchen, a quiet moment over chamomile tea and shortbread cookies, the kind she used to love as a child. Natalie was scrolling through her phone casually as if nothing in the world could break the calm. Then she froze. Not a twitch, not a word, just a slow blink, followed by a breath so controlled it made my own chest tighten. She turned the screen slightly toward me, but I didn't need to read the whole message to feel the weight of it. I'm leaving you. I'm moving to LA with Tiffany Ross. I've emptied our joint account. Good luck. I felt the sting shoot up my spine like someone had slapped me across the face. My hand hovered over hers, but I didn't reach for her. I waited. I watched. She didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't even swear. Instead, she tucked her phone away, took another sip of tea, and asked me if I still had the number for our old plumber, something about a leaky faucet in her bathroom. That's when I knew. Natalie hadn't just been betrayed. She'd seen it coming. I'd seen the cracks too, if I'm honest. The missed dinner dates. The way Eric Dawson, my charming but always slippery son-in-law, started dressing like he was in a boy band instead of working in finance. New cologne, gym selfies, constant texts he never explained. I remember Natalie brushing it off with a sad smile. He's chasing something. I'm just not sure it's me anymore. But even then, she didn't raise her voice or fall apart. She quietly observed, not like a victim, but like someone writing everything down in a ledger only she could see. Now here she was receiving the divorce via text with the grace of a woman who'd already processed the grief, already dried the tears I never saw fall. It was me who felt my pulse pounding, me who wanted to throw the phone across the kitchen. But Natalie, she just stood up, rinsed her cup in the sink, and said I should head home. I've got a few things to organize, no bitterness, no drama. That night, as I sat in my living room replaying the moment over and over, I realized I wasn't looking at the beginning of her heartbreak. I was witnessing the first step of her quiet war. And Eric, he had no clue what was coming. Natalie met Eric during her junior year at Boston University. He was older, already working as an assistant financial analyst, and had that kind of easy charm that made people lean in when he talked. I remember the first time she brought him home for dinner. He brought me flowers, made eye contact, laughed at my husband's dry jokes. I thought, finally, a man who sees her. Back then, she was this bright, unstoppable force. She'd always been focused, majored in marketing, minored in fashion design. While her friends partied, Natalie spent nights sketching boutique layouts and researching textiles. When she told us she wanted to open her own store one day, I remember Eric smiling and saying, "That's cute. We'll see where life takes us." I didn't love the way he said it, but Natalie did, and when she loves, she doesn't hold back. They got married in a small fall ceremony under the oak trees behind our family's lake cabin. She wore my mother's pearls. He cried during his vows, and for a while I believed they had something solid. They moved into a modest condo in Cambridge. Natalie took a job at a local retail chain, saving up every penny. Eric, meanwhile, started moving up promotions, conferences, new suits. He liked to talk about stocks over dinner, liked the sound of his own voice. But he provided. And Natalie, she supported him in every way. When she finally opened her boutique, I saw her come alive again. It was tiny at first, one-room bare walls rack she built herself. But she made it work. Every window display was a work of art. Her hands never stopped moving. Eric, on the other hand, barely noticed. He called it her little side thing, told his friends she was playing shopkeeper. She never corrected him, at least not out loud. Instead, she worked harder. She reinvested every dollar, built an online presence, and by year 3, she was turning more profit than Eric's cushy finance job. Still, he downplayed it, said she was lucky, said fashion was seasonal, unpredictable. That real stability came from people like him. He never attended her launch parties, never bragged about her the way she bragged about him. I watched it all, the small cuts that never bled but left bruises. Like the way he'd scroll through his phone while she talked about a new handbag line. Or the way he rolled his eyes when she stayed late to restock. It's not like you're saving lives, Nat. Still, she loved him. She believed in marriage, in second chances. She gave him room to figure himself out, gave him trust he hadn't earned in years. But slowly she started giving herself something to boundaries. She opened a separate savings account. She hired a part-time manager so she could step back, breathe. She stopped waiting for his approval. She started taking business classes online, reading about intellectual property and marital asset protection. I remember asking her once over lunch why she was studying contracts. She smiled and said, "Just want to know where I stand legally." That was the moment I knew she was preparing, not hoping anymore. Not for a reunion, but for the storm she felt brewing behind those perfect Instagram photos and empty dinner conversations. Eric, of course, noticed none of it. He was busy rebranding himself, started growing a beard, bought loafers too young for him, joined a co-working gym where half the members were influencers. He started coming home later blaming networking. But he always smelled like cologne I didn't buy him for Christmas. Natalie noticed. But she didn't accuse. She didn't cry. She took notes. She watched, she listened, and she built her wall of quiet protection one brick at a time. And through it all, she still made time to visit me, still brought me my favorite muffins on Sundays, still asked about my blood pressure meds and whether I'd scheduled that eye exam. You wouldn't know a woman preparing for the worst was also taking care of everyone else. That was Natalie. So when that text finally came and Eric thought he'd delivered the final blow, he had no idea he'd just walked right into a plan a year in the making. He thought he was free, but all he'd done was trigger a silent countdown, one that would end with the truth staring him dead in the face. I think it started with the necklace. Natalie had been working day and night on her boutique's fall collection, limited run handbags, wool scarves, statement belts she designed herself. She invited me to the launch party weeks in advance, even had little name tags made for Mom's table. She asked Eric Dawson to come too, of course. He didn't confirm until the day before, and even then she was the one who sent him a reminder. The event was beautiful. Cozy string lights, jazz music playing softly. Every detail carried her signature, careful, elegant, heartfelt. I watched her float around the room, shaking hands, sharing stories about the fabrics, smiling at guests like she believed in every word. Eric arrived 45 minutes late, still on his phone. He didn't kiss her cheek, didn't greet her friends, didn't even look at the new line she'd worked so hard to build. Instead, he wandered straight to the wine table, poured himself a glass, and leaned in the corner like he was waiting to be noticed. Natalie walked over to him, her smile dimmed but intact, and introduced him to a local fashion blogger. He mumbled something that sounded like cool stuff and looked at his watch. "We good here?" Soon he asked her out loud with people nearby. "I've got a fantasy football draft in an hour." Natalie laughed it off, even touched his arm like it was nothing. But I saw her blink just a little too long. That flicker so fast most people wouldn't have caught it. I did. The next morning, I stopped by the store to return some platters we'd used for the refreshments. That's when I saw it. The necklace. A simple silver chain with a tiny charm, nothing extravagant. I'd given it to her on her 30th birthday. She'd worn it almost every day since. But there it was, coiled on the corner of the counter under a stack of receipts like it didn't mean anything at all. "Chain got tangled," she said when I asked. "Took it off before the event, but she didn't put it back on, not that day. Not the next. Not ever, as far as I saw. It wasn't about the necklace. It never is. It was what it represented, something she used to carry close, now quietly abandoned." That evening, we folded tissue paper together for the next round of shipments. Natalie didn't say much. Her hands moved mechanically, carefully. I asked how she felt the event went. She shrugged. "Eric said I should stop wasting energy on this. That boutique work isn't scalable. Says if I cared more about our future, I'd sell and help him invest in crypto." I paused. "And what did you say to that?" I told him I'd think about it. She answered, but her jaw tightened. "He says I'm too emotionally attached to stuff. That real success is freedom, not fabric." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted metal. What I wanted to say was, "That man is not your partner." What I wanted to scream was, "How dare he look down on something you built from nothing?" But I didn't. Natalie wasn't ready to hear it. I think part of her still wanted to believe Eric was just lost, that maybe if she loved him harder, supported him more, he'd find his way back. But his words had already left bruises she didn't show. It wasn't long after that dinner when he started floating bigger ideas, talking about shared investments, joint assets, and how consolidating their bank accounts would streamline everything. Natalie agreed, all smiles, and then quietly moved her personal savings into a private account the next day. I know because she told me over coffee, like she was discussing the weather. "I'm not panicking, Mom," she said. "I'm just making sure I know where I stand." I remember staring at her across the table, my daughter who used to draw purses in her diary, who once cried when she got her first sewing machine, now calmly laying financial groundwork for a war she hoped wouldn't come but knew might. And Eric, he had no clue. He thought she was still that same girl from their college years, gentle, loyal, so in love with him that she'd never imagine a life without him. He didn't realize she'd already started imagining it and preparing for it. That's what made this first real betrayal, the dismissiveness, the minimization, the way he tried to convert her dream into his stepping stone, so sharp, so dangerous. He wasn't just pulling away, he was laying the groundwork to erase her. And Natalie, in her quiet brilliance, was already 3 steps ahead. I was making dinner rosemary chicken, Natalie's favorite, when her phone lit up on the counter. She was helping me set the table. I glanced down, not meaning to pry, but the message glowed bold and arrogant, impossible to ignore. "Don't bother begging. Tiffany and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later." Natalie read it. Then she turned her phone face down, picked up the silverware, and placed it next to the plate like nothing happened. But I saw the twitch in her thumb, the way her jaw flexed like she was biting back something sharp. "Are you okay?" I asked carefully. "He's just trying to get a reaction," she said. "That's not going to happen." That was the moment I knew my daughter had crossed a threshold. Whatever part of her had been clinging to hope was gone. After dinner, she stayed to wash the dishes. I wanted to sit her down and tell her she didn't have to be strong, that she could scream, cry, throw a damn glass if she wanted, but she didn't want that. She wanted strategy. I handed her a towel. She wiped her hands and picked up her phone. "I think it's time," she said. "Rachel has the papers ready. Rachel Adams, her lawyer, the same one she'd consulted quietly 6 weeks ago when she found unexplained hotel charges on their credit card. Natalie had kept receipts, screenshots, even voice memos of strange things Eric had said, documenting it all with the same precision she used in running her boutique. "Do you want him served here?" I asked. "No," she said. "Let him think he's won. He'll get them in Los Angeles." The next morning, the texts escalated. "You're not getting any younger, Nat. At least you've got your little shop to keep you busy." Your little shop. As if the boutique hadn't paid for most of their lifestyle. As if the woman who stayed up until 2 a.m. packaging orders wasn't the one funding his gym memberships and fantasy football leagues. Still, she didn't respond. Not to him, anyway. She forwarded every message to Rachel. That evening, she called the credit card company and calmly reported the charges. "Yes, I have texts from my husband admitting he used the joint card for flights and hotel bookings with another woman," she said, voice steady. The representative canceled everything. Eric and Tiffany would show up at the airport the next day to discover their tickets invalid. Their hotel reservation gone. The little fantasy he'd been building shattered before it even began. Later that night, Natalie poured herself a glass of wine, one of the good bottles she'd been saving. "Special occasion?" I asked. "Yep," she said. "Tonight I'm toasting to property law." I laughed. She didn't. Not really. But there was a flicker of something peace, maybe beginning to return to her face. The next day brought more than just airline fury. It brought phone calls. From his family. Margaret Dawson, his mother, called first. She rarely reached out unless it was Christmas or a birthday. "Claire dear," she said, her voice already laced with accusation. "Eric told us everything about how controlling Natalie's been, how she pushed him away, and now she's sabotaging his travel plans. I put her on speakerphone while I arranged a vase of lilies Natalie had brought me that morning. Did he mention emptying their joint account?" I asked. Silence. Or using the credit card for a vacation with his receptionist, or sending her a divorce text in the middle of dinner prep. Another pause, then, "Well," he said, "she left him no choice." "That she's been cold and distant, Margaret," I cut in. Gently, "I have the texts. Would you like me to read them aloud? The one where he mocked her age, or the one where he laughed about stealing their money?" There was a long silence, then a sigh. "He did seem a bit cruel, that's one way to put it." I told him the text was inappropriate. I appreciate the call, I said, but my daughter has a lawyer now, and I've been advised to limit contact with his side of the family during proceedings. Proceedings? Her voice cracked. Yes, goodbye, Margaret. And I hung up. That same afternoon, Samantha Dawson, Eric's sister, started spreading rumors through mutual friends. Said Natalie was being vindictive, that she was trying to ruin Eric's future out of spite. But 2 days later, Samantha showed up at the boutique, not with accusations, but with downcast eyes and an apology. I saw the text, she said. I didn't want to believe it at first, but now I'm ashamed I ever doubted her. I didn't blame her, not really. Eric had always played the victim beautifully. But Natalie. She never needed to play anything. She had the truth. And now, little by little, the masks were coming off. It was a gray Monday morning when we walked into the courthouse. I remember because Natalie wore navy blue, not black. She didn't want to look like she was in mourning. She walked ahead of me, back straight, chin steady, as if she were stepping onto a runway she'd designed herself. She didn't fidget, didn't fix her hair. She didn't need to. Eric was already there, sitting next to his lawyer. I barely recognized him. He wore jeans 2 sizes too small and a blazer that screamed desperation. The once polished, clean-shaven man now looked like a poor imitation of his younger self, clutching at the remnants of cool. Tiffany wasn't allowed inside, but I saw her through the window, waiting arms crossed, chewing her gum like she was bored. Her tight little dress looked like it belonged at a club, not outside a courtroom. Natalie didn't even glance in her direction. The hearing began. Rachel, Natalie's attorney, stood like she'd been preparing for this moment her whole career. And honestly, I think she had. She laid out every piece of evidence methodically. Screenshots of the texts Eric sent after draining the account. Statements from their joint bank account showing large withdrawals right before his escape. Travel records, hotel bookings, all on the shared credit card. And finally, legal proof that the boutique had been incorporated solely in Natalie's name long before the marriage. Receipts, tax forms, business registrations, each one cataloged and time-stamped. Eric's lawyer tried to shift the narrative. Your Honor, he began, my client admits he made some rash decisions, but Mrs. Green's actions have been vindictive and calculated. Rachel didn't flinch. Calculated, she said, eyebrows raised. No, Your Honor. What my client has done is protect her legal rights. She maintained separate accounts. She kept detailed financial records. That's not vindictiveness. That's preparation. Then she turned, opened a folder, and pulled out the deed to Natalie's house left to her by her grandmother. Eric's name was nowhere on it. He had tried to claim partial ownership 2 weeks before. But now, with documents in front of him, he looked like a kid caught forging a permission slip. The judge, an older man with clear disdain for theatrics, adjusted his glasses and looked directly at Eric. Mr. Dawson, he said, do you deny using your joint bank account to fund a vacation with another woman while your divorce was pending? Eric stammered, it wasn't pending yet. I just needed a clean break. By committing financial fraud, the judge asked, one brow raised. I didn't think of it like that. Clearly, the courtroom was silent except for the clicking of Rachel's pen. And now the judge continued, you're attempting to claim rights to a business that by documentation is not a marital asset. What justification do you have for that? Eric's lawyer cleared his throat. The business may have been founded before the marriage, but my client contributed to its growth financially and emotionally. He believed he was a partner. Rachel stood again. With all due respect, Your Honor, emotional support does not equal legal ownership. And as for financial contribution, here are the ledgers. Every dollar invested in the boutique came from Natalie's personal income or inheritance. Mr. Dawson's name appears nowhere, not on contracts, not on expenses, not on payroll. I looked over at Eric. He wasn't smirking anymore. He looked smaller somehow, not just embarrassed, exposed. All this time, he'd counted on charm, on confusion, on the hope that Natalie would be too devastated to fight. He didn't realize she wasn't trying to win him back. She was trying to close the door behind him for good. The judge leaned back. Given the clarity of the evidence and the timeline of events, the court finds sufficient grounds to freeze all joint assets pending final dissolution. Eric jolted forward in his seat. But that money's gone. We already. Then I suggest you find a way to return it. The judge cut him off. The court takes a dim view of using shared resources to fund extramarital activities. That line landed like a hammer. Eric's lawyer slumped back. Tiffany outside the glass looked like she was checking her phone again. When the hearing ended, Natalie turned to me and gave a small, quiet nod. Not a victory grin, not a fist pump, just a nod. She'd done what she came to do, tell the truth, stand her ground, and remind Eric that he hadn't been playing chess with a child. He'd been playing against a queen. As we walked out, I heard Tiffany's voice behind us. So what now? We go back to your mom's again. Eric didn't respond. Or maybe he did, but the sound of Natalie's heels clicking confidently across the marble floor drowned him out. I didn't look back, and neither did she. I heard from Samantha first. It had been just 4 days since the hearing when she walked into Natalie's boutique. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked embarrassed, not angry, not bitter, just small, like someone who had realized they'd been defending a lie for far too long. She walked past the handbag's fingers brushing a silk scarf on display and stood awkwardly at the counter. I owe Natalie an apology, she said quietly. And you too, Mrs. Green. I didn't say anything right away. I let her talk. He told us you were controlling, cold, that she didn't support his dreams. I believed him. I repeated it. But after reading those texts, hearing how he bragged about draining the account, I don't know who he is anymore. Natalie came out from the back, calm as ever. She didn't say I told you so. She didn't even flinch. It's all right, she said gently. You believed what you were meant to believe. That was Natalie, always choosing grace even when she had every right not to. Samantha bought 2 scarves before she left, paid in full. No discount asked, none offered. That's when I knew the tide had turned. Word got around. Fast. Not just through family, but friends, neighbors, even some of Eric's old coworkers. His clean break had become a messy unraveling, and he had no one to blame but himself. His promotion gone. Apparently, HR had launched a quiet investigation into his relationship with Tiffany long before the hearing. The reprimand landed in his file the same week the judge froze his assets. Tiffany didn't last long after that. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she kicked him out of her apartment 2 weeks later, said he was too old to be starting over, and that living with a man who couldn't pay rent wasn't quite the glamorous affair she'd imagined. He moved back in with his mother, 45 years old, sleeping in the same bedroom where he once hung posters of boy bands and baseball legends. Margaret called me a few days after his return. Her voice was tight, brittle. I don't know what's happened to him, she said. I thought I raised him better. I didn't respond right away. I was watching Natalie rearrange handbags by the display window. Her business had picked up since the hearing. Word of her strength, of what she'd endured, and how she responded had quietly drawn people in. We offered to help, Margaret continued, help him get back on his feet. But he just blames everyone. You, Natalie, the judge, the company, everyone but himself. That sounds about right, I said, folding laundry. But that's not our burden anymore, she paused. You're right, she whispered. It's not. We didn't talk again after that. By then, Natalie had already signed the lease for her second boutique location, this one in a trendier part of Boston. She hired 2 new employees. Her online store was thriving. Every time I walked in, it was like stepping into a space that breathed power and peace. And still Eric couldn't let go. He tried filing a petition to revisit the divorce settlement, claiming unfair distribution. The judge dismissed it in less than 10 minutes and ordered him to pay court fees. Rachel Adams called to tell us, almost amused. He even argued that his text about emptying the account was a joke, she said. The judge asked if the ha-ha at the end made theft less illegal. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. But Natalie, she just smiled and went back to her spreadsheets. Then came the part that surprised even me. The boutique had started drawing in younger women who came not just for the products, but for advice. Some were starting their own businesses. Some had just gotten out of bad relationships. Some just wanted to talk. And Natalie gave them her time, her story, her strength. She never framed herself as a victim, never boasted about the courtroom win. She just shared what she'd learned. Keep your account separate, she told one young woman, not because you're preparing for failure, but because you're respecting your work. That line stuck with me. Respect your work, respect yourself, and never let someone else convince you that you're disposable. Eric had tried to turn Natalie's life upside down. Instead, she rebuilt it into something stronger than before. And I, watching from the sidelines, realized something too. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't making someone hurt, it's making yourself whole again, louder, brighter, and more unshakable than they ever imagined. It was a Saturday afternoon when I saw her again, Tiffany. I was stocking gift bags for Natalie's second boutique opening when she walked in. I recognized her instantly. Same long hair, same nervous posture, but the heels were lower, the makeup softer. She looked less certain, less smug. Natalie was in the back, finalizing the product layout, so I approached first. "Can I help you with something?" I asked. She looked startled, then glanced around the store. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said quickly. I I just wanted to speak to Natalie, if that's okay." There was a pause, heavy but not hostile. I studied her. She wasn't the villain I had imagined in my head all those months ago. She looked like someone who'd believed in the wrong man, just like my daughter once had. Natalie came out a moment later, composed as ever. Her eyes flicked to Tiffany, then back to me. "It's all right, Mom," she said gently. "I've got this." They stepped into the side room. I didn't eavesdrop, but I couldn't help noticing the quiet tension. A few minutes passed, then 10, then 15. When Natalie returned, her expression wasn't hard. It wasn't warm either, just still. She apologized, she told me later, said she believed every lie he told her about me, that I was controlling, bitter, emotionally cold. Then he started treating her the same way. I raised an eyebrow. "So she's left him?" Natalie nodded. "Weeks ago. He tried to move into her place permanently when his mom got tired of him lounging around. Said he'd help grow her Instagram business. By the second week, he was sleeping till noon and complaining about the size of her closet. I nearly laughed. Let me guess he had big dreams. Just needed someone else's credit to fund them." "Exactly," Natalie said. That was the twist. Tiffany wasn't the replacement. She was just the next one in line. And she had stepped out like Natalie had, only slower and maybe with fewer tools. I didn't pity her, but I understood her now. And I was glad Natalie did too. There was no vengeance in her voice when she told the story, no bitterness, only clarity, a kind of strength that doesn't need to shout anymore. By then, the boutique had expanded beyond what she'd once imagined. Her online store was thriving. She'd hired 2 assistants, started mentoring young women in business forums. One day, a college-aged girl came in and asked, "Is it true you once lost everything and rebuilt it?" Natalie smiled. "Not everything," she said. "Just the part that was weighing me down." That became something of a quote around here. People shared it online, framed it over their desks. The boutique wasn't just a store anymore, it was a symbol. Natalie had become something bigger than a brand. She was a story, a warning, and more importantly, a blueprint. She was invited to speak at a women's business summit in DC, not just about entrepreneurship, but about protecting your autonomy. She didn't dramatize her story, she didn't name names. She just said, "The best preparation isn't for betrayal, it's for becoming the kind of woman who can recover from anything." I watched her from the front row that day, surrounded by women nodding silently, some wiping tears. I felt something rise in my chest, not anger, not even pride. It was deeper than that. It was peace. Peace in knowing she'd found her footing. Peace in knowing she'd turned her worst day into her strongest asset. Peace in watching her walk through the fire, not to prove anything to him, but to remind herself of what she already knew: she was never the weak one. Eric Dawson. I barely thought about him anymore. From what I'd heard, he was living in a friend's guest room, trying and failing to start a podcast about financial independence. Still blaming others. Still stuck. Tiffany, on the other hand, had started over too. Opened a social media consulting firm. Guess where she bought all her office decor? From Natalie's store. Funny how life works. It was the 5-year anniversary of Natalie's first boutique, and the place was buzzing. Balloons lined the storefront windows. A local jazz trio played softly near the checkout. There were trays of mini quiches and lemon tarts, glasses of sparkling cider passed around by a smiling staff in black aprons. Natalie stood near the center of the store in a navy jumpsuit, strong lines, clean cut, no fuss. The kind of outfit that didn't ask for attention but commanded it anyway. I watched from the corner holding a cup of cider, just taking it all in. The space that once felt small and risky was now the flagship of a 5-location brand. Her original little shop, the one Eric had mocked in that infamous text, had turned into a business featured in national magazines. It employed over 30 women, some fresh out of college, some mothers restarting their careers, some survivors of their own broken stories. On the far wall behind the checkout hung a framed screenshot of the text that started it all. Hope your little shop keeps you busy in your old age. Hey, hey. Beneath it, in a simple black frame, was a new addition, her award plaque. Top 100 Women Entrepreneurs in America. No glitter, no bragging, just facts. People took pictures with it. Some smiled. Some just stared like it was a monument to something bigger than business. I found her near the back, talking to a young employee about a new shipment. You should place the silk scarves where the light hits, Natalie was saying. They sell themselves when they shimmer. She spotted me, smiled, then waved me over. You okay, Mom? She asked. I looked at her and felt something warm settle in my chest. I'm more than okay. We stood together for a moment in silence, letting the hum of laughter and music fill the space. Then a voice behind us said, "Excuse me, Natalie." We both turned. It was Margaret. I hadn't seen her since the divorce was finalized. She looked older, slower somehow, but well put together. She wore one of Natalie's scarves around her neck. I noticed that immediately. I didn't get an invitation, she began, but I wanted to stop by. If that's all right. Natalie nodded. Of course, I saw Eric yesterday. Margaret continued, her voice quieter now. He was talking about what he lost, blaming everything but himself. Still, she sighed. He doesn't understand that he didn't lose everything in the divorce. He threw it away. There was no venom in her tone, just sadness. Then she looked at me. You raised her well. And with that, she turned and left. No drama, no apology, just an acknowledgement that meant more than she probably realized. Later that night, after the last customer left and the music faded, Natalie and I sat alone in the boutique. We sipped tea from mismatched mugs. She kicked off her heels, rubbed her ankles, and sighed the sigh of a woman who'd earned every second of her peace. Do you ever think about him? I asked, not with spite, just curiosity. She thought for a moment. Not really, she said. He was a chapter. I'm somewhere else now. She pointed toward the framed text on the wall. That used to hurt. Now it motivates. She stood, walked to the back room, and came out with something rolled in brown craft paper. This is for you, she said, handing it to me. I opened it slowly. It was a canvas print, a simple quote in elegant script over a background of soft blue. I didn't get even. I got better. My throat tightened. I'm going to hang it in every location, she said, not just for me, for the girls coming up behind me, for anyone who's ever been made to feel small. We didn't say much after that. Some moments don't need more words. As I drove home later that night, the streets felt quieter, the city lights less harsh. I thought about everything Natalie had endured, how she'd gone from betrayed to unbreakable, from dismissed to deeply respected. And I thought about all the women watching her, the ones walking into her stores, the ones reading her story online, the ones just starting to realize that they too could rebuild. Maybe she didn't just reclaim her life. Maybe she lit a path for someone else. And you reading this, if someone tried to write you out of your own story, if they ever mocked your dreams, doubted your strength, or treated your worth like it was optional, would you fight to prove them wrong, or would you rise quietly, fiercely, until there was nothing left for them to say? Let me know below, because I think your story's just getting started.